Okay, so in the Philippines, there's a new law on the table that's supposed to solve a really old problem, political dynasties. But here's the twist, and it's a fascinating one. The very law designed to stop them might actually become the perfect rule book for their survival. And that's the wild paradox we're going to unpack here. You have a bill that's meant to finally ban these powerful political families, but it's being accused of doing the exact opposite, of giving them a playbook to stay in power forever. So, to really get it, let's start from the beginning. You see, to understand the controversy that's swirling around today, we have to go back in time. This whole debate is really rooted in a promise that's been waiting decades, literally decades, to be fulfilled. First things first, let's just make sure we're on the same page. When we say political dynasty, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about families that pass political power down from one generation to the next, or, spread it out among a bunch of relatives, basically controlling specific areas or jobs for a really long time. So get this. The idea of banning dynasties was written into the country's constitution all the way back in 1987. But just look at this timeline. For nearly 40 years, crickets. Nothing happened. No law was ever passed to actually enforce that ban, which left it as just a nice idea on paper. Until now. And here's the little phrase that changes everything. The Constitution prohibits dynasties, but with one massive catch, as may be defined by law. That little bit right there meant the ban was basically useless until a law was passed to spell out what a dynasty even is. And for decades, the very people who were benefiting from the system were the ones in charge of writing that definition. You can see the problem, right? So, after all that waiting, a proposed solution has finally been put on the table. And this is it, House Bill 607071, officially known as the Anti-Political Dynasty Act. This is the bill that's supposed to be that long-awaited enabling law. Now, this bill is being pushed by figures like House Speaker Faustino Day III and Representative Sandro Marcos. And their argument is pretty straightforward. Hey, this constitutional rule has been just symbolic for way too long. This bill, they say, finally gives it teeth, providing the real legal definition needed to put the ban into action. And, on the surface, that sounds exactly like the reform people have been asking for. But, and this is a huge but, this is where the story takes a sharp turn. Critics started digging into the details of the bill and raised a major alarm. They started arguing that this proposed solution might actually be worse than the problem itself. This quote from Representative Percy Sedania just captures the opposition's fear perfectly. He's warning that, far from dismantling dynasties, this bill could end up legitimizing them, basically giving them an official stamp of approval as long as they follow a new set of rules. So you get this huge disconnect between what the bill says it's for and what people are afraid it will actually do. The supporters say it's about dismantling powerful families. But the critics, they argue it will just standardize the clever workarounds those families are already using to keep their grip on power. So you're probably asking, how could a law that's supposed to ban dynasties actually end up legitimizing them? Well, it all comes down to the definition. Critics are screaming from the rooftops that the definition of a dynasty in this bill is so incredibly narrow and specific that it's just full of massive loopholes. How would that actually work? Well, critics point to a few big things. So for instance, the bill might stop a husband and wife from being, say, governor and vice governor at the same time. Okay, great. But what's to stop them from just taking turns in the governor's office? Or it might not prevent one relative from being a mayor while another is a congressperson representing the very same province. In fact, it just creates a set of boundaries that are actually pretty easy to plan around if you're smart. And this brings us right to the core of the whole disagreement. Are you actually stopping dynastic rule? Or are you just handing these powerful families a playbook on how to keep doing it? Just legally? That's the billion-dollar question at the heart of this entire debate. So you can see, this leaves anyone who genuinely wants reform in a really, really tough spot. They're facing a classic political dilemma. And here's the elephant in the room, the thing that makes this whole issue so messy. The very people who have to vote yes or no on an anti-dynasty law are, in a whole lot of cases, members of political dynasties themselves. I mean, it's a massive built-in conflict of interest, which is exactly why getting a really strict, powerful ban passed is next to impossible. And that leads to the ultimate fear for reformers. Once a flawed, weak law is on the books, it can be held up as proof that the problem has been solved. See, we did it. It could shut down the whole conversation for another generation, all while the core dynastic system stays completely intact. So, what do you do? I mean, really, do you take the flawed bill because, hey, it's the only thing that might actually pass and hope that having some limits is better than nothing? Or do you reject it completely and hold out for a much stronger law, even if that means you might be waiting another 40 years? There is no easy answer here. At the end of the day, this whole thing about House Bill 6771, it isn't just about legal definitions or political loopholes. It's about a much, much bigger question. In any system, who gets to write the rules? And what happens when you ask those people to write rules that actually limit their own power? That, right there, is the real paradox.